But most early church fathers condemned violence for, if you're in the church, you must leave the military, quit service, because you now belong to the kingdom of God, which is operates on a different
Do you agree with that?
I agree that if you're a Christian, you have no reason to commit violence for any reason at all.
I think that's insane.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Ben with Faith Unfiltered. We have another Charlie Kirk video for you. Today, in this clip, he replies to a student confronting him about Christian nationalism. And Charlie pretty much says that as Christians, we should be involved in politics into a certain extent, right? Because we want to push laws that reflect God's morality for us and what the Bible teaches on morality. And so Charlie Kirk says that we can't be pacifists. We can't be just sitting back and let the world, Satan, runs the world, right? Because we have to stand up for the truth and we have to speak the truth. And in that way, we have to affect the laws and we have to create laws that reflect God, right? And God's justice. And so I think this is a really important discussion on how Christians should move forward, especially when it comes to politics. So let's watch.
Hello, how are you?
Good. My name is Nick. I'm an aerospace engineering student here. Got a couple questions.
Awesome.
That's all right. So I'm particularly concerned about your brand of Christianity. As a Christian myself, Christian nationalism I do not agree with at all. I think it's antithetical to the values of the early church. And I think, how do you reconcile especially white Christians in this America, marrying politics and power with their faith in this country?
Well, there's a lot there. I've never described myself as a Christian nationalist. So I'm a Christian and a nationalist, so I've never used those two things.
And then right there, that and nationalist, where in the scriptures does a Christian...
Well, thank you. Jeremiah 29:7, demand the welfare of the nation that you are in, because your welfare is tied to your nation's welfare. Let me continue. Daniel fasted and prayed for his nation. Esther and Mordecai cared for their nation. They were counsel to the king.
Right.
Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Joseph, Jacob. I could keep on going. Moses, Aaron. In fact, Moses was so political that he wrote an entire book of the Torah all about how to set up a government. It's the book of Deuteronomy. So, in fact, the Bible is an explicitly political text amongst many other things.
Now, can we interpret those texts in the light of the revelation of Christ? Because you just cited all Old Testament texts, but you've not once cited St. Paul.
Okay, yeah. If you want me to also, by the way, just so we are,
cite St. Paul about the kingdom of heaven and the governance.
Just so we're clear, do you think that the New Testament is greater than the Old Testament?
It is. It is greater because the revelation of Christ dictates how we interpret the Old Testament.
So you think that all of a sudden, like Genesis 1 is not as great just because of the New Testament?
The Old Testament was a type and shadow of the things to come, and now we live in the full revelation of Christ.
Again, that is by definition that is such a dangerous theological...
That's not true. That's Christological theology.
Hold on. Of course I believe in the resurrection. But to all of a sudden say that, like, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth is, like, somehow lesser because of the revelation of the New Testament. Christ even said, I did not come to abolish the law of the prophets, I came to fulfill the law. In fact, he said all the laws of the prophet hang on the two teachings, Leviticus 19 and Deuteronomy 3-5. However, to use a New Testament example, as you asked, says in 1 Timothy, pray for your leaders in authority by name that they might make righteous great decisions. I'm going to continue. Christ our Lord said, on this rock build my what?
Church.
Wrong. Ecclesia. It's not the word church.
Okay,
the word
English
church,
translations of Common Bible say church, so my bad.
Well, actually, it shouldn't, because the original Greek term says, on this rock build my government structure. Ecclesia was a secular word used in that time, which was all about the advancement of freedom and liberty, which are the two words in Greek, eleutheria, isonomia, which are the two words there. So the point being, Christ called us to be salt and light. We as Christians should change the environment that we come in contact with. That's what salt and light do. So why should we then not care about changing government to be more Christ-like?
Well, you're conflating changing government to be more Christ-like with what I was discussing was nationalistic endeavors, which is the inherent view that our nation is better than other nations.
Well, it is.
Well, God shows no partiality. So
well, no, that's not true. God says in Revelation, I will judge the nations. God says that
the nations means ethnicity groups. Well, it doesn't mean borders of countries established.
Not necessarily. Hold on.
It does.
God says the Constitution of Israel will come at the end of the age. Borders is biblical. The entire book of Nehemiah is about building a wall around the nation of Israel. In fact, the idea of borders, the idea of sovereignty is an explicitly biblical idea.
Yes, but Israel is no longer defined by the physical borders. It's actually defined in the spiritual sons and daughters of God who believe in Jesus.
That's a Catholic interpretation.
That's not just Catholic.
Again, it's primarily a Catholic interpretation. I don't share it. I don't want to get into that theological
Okay,
debate.
okay.
Because we're going to get nowhere. My mind won't be changed. Your mind won't be changed. But around nationalism, why don't you tell me, and I will listen, what a Christian's role in government should or should not be?
Simple. Sermon on the Mount. Operate in that way, and that's
What does that look like in practice in America in 2025?
well. In practice, it doesn't look like what has happened in history with Christians who have tried to establish their governance in the lands. For example, American history, slavery. Majority of white Christians supported the institution of slavery. Move on to Jim Crow.
That's actually not true.
No,
Time
that is
out.
true. That is true.
Time out. 9 out of 13 of the states, by the time of the ratification of the Constitution, were already abolishing slavery. 9 out of 13.
Let's move on to Jim Crow.
Time out. Slavery actually had a minority approval rating by the time of the U.S. founding. We were the second nation ever to abolish slavery because of Christianity. So let me just ask a very moral question. The Christians that got involved in the abolition of slavery, like John Quincy Adams and William Wilberforce, they did it in the name of Christ. Were they wrong?
No, but those were small minority Christians. Majority of the Christians of the
mass
time.
movements.
Let's move on to Jim Crow because majority.
You're moving on
No, because
it
I
was-
didn't finish my statement.
But it was
You interrupted my
Christianity that
statement.
abolished slavery.
It was a sect in Christianity that abolished it. It was a remnant of Christians who didn't go with the established order of what Christians believed.
Well, no.
We can go to Jim Crow. Let me finish the statement, please.
Okay, I mean,
in Jim Crow, majority of white Christians also supported not abolishing Jim Crow and keeping the institution. They did not support the civil rights movement. This is documented data.
Well, not supporting the Civil Rights Act and supporting Jim Crow are two completely different things.
Those go hand in hand
Well,
together.
the Civil Rights Act was a disaster. I mean, that was a terrible idea. But, I mean, that's a whole separate issue. But just so we are clear, because the Civil Rights Act hyper-racialized America. We actually talk about race more after the Civil Rights Act than before. We were promised a color-bride society. We got a race-obsessed society. But just to be clear, today in America, what does a Christian properly involved in government look like?
I'm just going to say the same thing I said, the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay,
Love your neighbor as yourself. Take others before your own needs. Feed the poor. Clothe the sick. Care for the widow.
Yeah,
advocate for these values.
I agree with all that. And so, for example, to care for the poor and care for the vulnerable, abolish abortion. Right?
So abortion is another issue, but what about the living right now? Because
Yes.
you don't seem to be for raising taxes on billionaires.
Of course not. Why would I?
So if you want to legislate morality, abortion,
It's not- wait.
I want to curb the sin of greed.
But so you want to curb the sin of greed
So
by taking other people's stuff? That's pretty greedy of you.
No, it is not. It is not.
Just to be clear,
the data shows is that
raising
the
taxes-
past 40 years, the wealth in this country, the wealth inequality
Yes.
has increased, which is the top 1% has
Yes.
grabbed the wealth of the
Totally.
majority bottom.
There are reasons why that's happened, but just
Why
so
is
we
that
are
happening?
clear,
Why is that happening?
I'm happy to explain that. Just so we are clear, saying we're going to just raise tax on the billionaires, that statement, you just violated 2 out of the 10 commandments.
That's not true.
Thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not covet.
How
We're going
is
to go
that
take
stealing?
other people's money.
How is that stealing?
Because it's their money.
We live in a society that is run by taxes. How is that stealing?
Well, taxations are a form of theft, definitionally, because it's not the government's money. It is private property that you earn when the government extracts
someone
it by
breaks
force.
into your house, you call the police. When you have a fire, you call the fireman. When you want to drive, you drive on roads. When you want to mail, you use the U.S. Post Office. These are all taxes.
Yeah,
we all contribute as a society.
Of
This
course. But
is, like this is elementary stuff. It's not theft. How do you run a society
Well, hold
without
on. What
taxes?
happens if you don't pay your taxes?
I mean, you get the law handed to you, but
Oh, okay. So therefore, so you pay taxes at gunpoint.
if you break the law, you should pay the fine.
No, exactly. That's the point. Is that taxes are not voluntary. Nor do I think they should be voluntary. You just have to be honest and say, yes, at some form, the government has to forcibly take some of your money away. I agree with that. But just we're going in so many different rabbit trails. Let me ask you just like a fundamental, simple question. Is that, do you want to see a government that fights for Christian principles or not?
That excludes the rest of the population. If we're not living in a theocracy, no, I want equal representation. And the church doesn't need to have government in order to thrive. In fact, in suffering and humility, the church thrives.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's like totally insane, but that's fine.
How is that insane? Go look at the early church.
You want to invite persecution is what you're saying.
I'm not inviting it, but
Yes, you do.
Christians ought to welcome it and embrace it and go through it.
Okay, but sometimes persecution results in the unjust suffering of millions of people unnecessarily. And so you should never invite evil into this world.
Did
We
Jesus
are
not
called-
promise that to us?
Well, did Jesus promised trials and difficult times.
Yes.
Yes, of course, but we should not invite it voluntarily. You know what that's like saying? Let's just, have no military. Everyone can invite us because persecution will make us stronger. It's such a ridiculous, abstract argument.
I mean, I don't see any scripture supporting a military for Christians.
You don't think we should have a military?
A government can have a military, but Christians...
Yeah, I mean, look, man, you got to go a lot deeper into the scriptures. You have a dangerously surface level.
You should read early church fathers on how they view violence and
Actually,
the military.
So you want to talk about early church fathers? Tell me about St. Augustine's just war theory.
You tell me about it.
Tell me, you just brought up early church fathers.
No, you tell me about
Tell
it.
me about St. Augustine in the City of God, 3rd chapter, just war theory.
Well, I don't really agree with a lot of St. Augustine because
he's the most popular early church
West,
father.
in the West. But there's the East, St. Athanasius, St. Gregory of Nyssa, Origen, all these different names that you probably are not familiar because it's in the East. But most early church fathers condemned violence for, if you're in the church, you must leave the military, quit service because you now belong to the kingdom of God, which operates on a different
Do you agree
plane.
with that?
I agree that if you're a Christian, you have no reason to commit violence for any reason at all.
I think that's insane.
I think it's kind of insane to say that we should not be in the military if you're a Christian. Are we not supposed to defend our country? Right? For example, if someone comes into my house, am I supposed to let them take my things? Am I supposed to let them hurt my family? Or am I supposed to stand in front of them and sacrifice myself for them? Am I supposed to put my life in front of them? That's what Jesus Christ called us to do, right? He says that the greatest act of love is to die for somebody. That's exactly what he did for us. So why would we not die for the people we love? Why shouldn't we die for our country and defending our country? Right? We can't just be pacifists. We can't just let people do whatever they want to do with us. When Jesus said turn the other cheek, he doesn't mean to not defend yourself, right? Even if that means using violence to defend yourself. Right? That's not what that meant. That meant to let go of resentment, to let go of hatred, right? That's saying we should take the high road. And so I think that's what it really means to turn the other cheek. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't defend ourselves, even if that's in the means of using violence, right? So yeah, I just think that's kind of ridiculous. And I think that's not what Jesus called us to do.
Honestly.
Just look at the example of Jesus. Was he put on a throne or did he embrace the cross?
It says at the end of age, Jesus will come with a sword to judge.
Are you reading Revelation literally?
Yes, of course
So
I am.
he has an actual sword out of his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, what's your contention?
The interpretation that's common is Revelation, when he has a sword, that's the word dividing your soul and spirit, piercing the hearts. He's not waging war on people and killing millions of people.
That Christians should not serve in the military is your contention?
That's my belief. You don't have to believe that.
Yeah. We're going to have to get to the next question.
All right.
That's a new one. I got to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
What an awesome discussion. It got a little intense at the end there, but I don't agree with the student's point. I get where he's coming from. I also get his point of view. And I truly believe that he is a Christian and what he says that he is, right? And I can see that. But I do disagree with some of his points about not being able, or we shouldn't be in the military if we're Christians. We shouldn't be involved in politics. We shouldn't be involved in the government. I don't think that's right, because regardless of how we want our country to be, there has to be a government, because there has to be some way to dictate how our country is going to run. And so why not have an impact in our government? Why not have a say in the laws that should be created, right? Especially when we have God behind us, when we have the Bible to back us up. We know that God is never wrong. And so we should always follow in God's way and what he wants for us. And we should do that through laws and regulations. I think that's a great way to get involved. That's a great way to change our country and change other people's lives. I really like that. And if you guys like that video, if you guys enjoy this, please like the click the like button, subscribe, share this video with somebody, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I really appreciate you all, and God bless. Peace.